Sir, it is indeed a privilege to talk to you. And as I was going through your how you progressed, it is fascinating that you were born in Dehradun, then you were educated in first in Delhi, then in Kolkata. Now you are settled in Bangalore. So you've traversed the whole length of the country. And your
Yeah,
education also shows me that you started with St. Stephen's, then a prestigious Delhi School of Economics. Then you were trained as a sociologist, and by your work now you're a historian,
correct.
and you also like classical music, you also like cricket, and you have also worked on environmental issues. So you are a true polymath of current the modern India. So, and given the width of your writing, that you have done serious theoretical work based on archival research, and which are meant for very, I mean, it's a pioneering work meant for historians, and you also have access, or you also have written for widely for the
Yeah.
general public and in several languages. I believe your writings have been translated in is being translated in around 6 7 languages, if I'm not wrong.
So my column appears in 10 languages
10
apart from.
languages.
I
Wow.
write in English. I only write in English. I understand and read Hindi, but I can't write in Hindi. But the column is translated in 10. So it appears in the Telegraph in English and appears in 10 Indian language newspapers and magazines.
So you have bridged the gap between serious academics and common people, right? So what is the secret? How do
So first of all, let me say, Partho, that though it may appear I have a wide range of interests and write on lots of different subjects, there's certain things I don't write about because I know nothing about them. So though I have 2 degrees in economics, I never publicly comment on economics because I was a very indifferent economist, which is not the fault of my teachers. It was because I had no aptitude for economics. In those days, at the age of 16, you had to decide what you wanted to do. And I wanted to do English literature, which was considered a soft subject. And I kind of meandered into economics and very early realized that this is not for me. I don't write on technology. I don't write on film, on fiction, on poetry, on drama. So even vast areas of literature, I am very clear that I absolutely lack the competence and expertise to comment on in public. Casual conversation in a adda, I may say something about, the economic survey or the budget or what trumps tariffs, but never, never beyond the confines of a room because on these things, I may be just, shooting the breeze. But the question you ask about a scholar communicating for a wider audience.
absolutely.
Now, there are, I think, two important things to remember in this context. One is some scholarly disciplines enable this. If you're a mathematician or a theoretical physicist or even an economic theorist, the complexity, the nuance, the subtlety, the originality of your intellectual arguments in your research papers cannot be communicated in the Aam Aadmi. You'll have to seriously dumb it down so it becomes meaningless. So the power and the originality of your ideas, which you developed through your research, is lost because unless you're a trained physicist, you can't understand what the originality of someone's research in physics is and so on. However, history and anthropology are humanistic disciplines where you can bridge the gap that you're studying the everyday lives and sentiments and emotions and relationships of other human beings. So, of course, you're using rigorous methods. As an anthropologist, you may spending a year in the field doing research. As a historian, you may spend several years in the different kinds of archives spread all over the world, looking for primary unpublished sources with which you construct your narrative. But ultimately, your the product of your research, which could be a PhD thesis, it could be a scholarly article, it could be a book, can be communicated in a way in which anyone can understand. So that's a very important distinction to recognize that history and anthropology and literature and possibly even some branches of economics like economic history, maybe the less technical economic policy,
Right.
not technical micro or macroeconomics, can actually, you can, and it's I believe it's obligatory and mandatory for scholars to try and do that. But that's the first thing. The second thing, even while doing it, uh, in the space of a newspaper article, you can only say so much.
That is why I was about to ask you that.
I always tell people, I hope if you like an article of mine, you move towards my books because there's much more in my books. There's more space to develop an argument, to display your range of sources, to introduce more analysis, more nuance. So certainly, I would like to be judged above all by my books, which also can be read by anyone who understands the English language or Hindi or Marathi or whichever language the book appears in. But because that's where you can really showcase how rich and original your research is. And how, in a newspaper, one last thing. It's not just space, Partho. It's not just, you can say much more in 400 pages vis-a-vis 1200 words. It's not just that. It's also 1200 for a newspaper. You have to, in a newspaper column, you have to really make one point.
Absolutely.
You have to hit home as a reader. I'm telling you this. You can't, in a book, you can go in different directions and then come back to the main thread.
Absolutely.
So, but obviously, not fewer people have the time or the interest to read a book than they do to read a column. So that's why I write column.
So I was about to ask you this, that within those confines of 1,000 to 1,500 words, do you stick to one or two points?
Yes. So in one or two points, or just one person. So, for example, just to, I don't. This will be published sometime afterwards. But tomorrow, I'm my column in the Telegraph tomorrow. A day after on Saturday, which appears every alternate Saturday, is on a particular individual, the remarkable trade union leader and thinker Shankar Guha Yogi, who was brutally murdered. Now, there's a new book about him. So I've written about what his life means and what it meant and what it means. Now, if I was writing a book, I would juxtapose his life and work in the context of the trade union movement as a whole, in the context of the environmental movement as a whole. I would bring in other leaders, other thinkers with complementary or contradictory views. I may have a comparative global perspective. What does it mean to work among unorganized workers versus organized workers? What is the situation in terms of labor rights in India versus China? So here, all I'm doing is, because Guha Yogi died 35 years ago, I'm saying these are the reasons an Indian born after his death needs to know about it. Right. So it's very sharp, very precise, but so you can still say things in a column as long as you don't bring in too many points, too many anecdotes, too many people, too many theories. So it's also training. It's good training for scholars and teachers, because in a lecture you have to make sure your point gets home. Not just to students, but to a wider public audience. However sophisticated your research is, communication is important for scholars.
Absolutely.
And a column trains you, newspaper writing trains you in that.
Absolutely. And fascinating reading your columns always. And one of my professors, Professor Prabhat Patnaik, also writes alternatively in the space. Yeah. I can get a different perspectives. Sir, most of your work, your initial work was mostly on Gandhi and Ambedkar, and these guys also is always there in your writing, right? And I believe your future next book, Gandhi and its critics, is coming with a different perspective on this.
Yeah.
So how do you think these guys can influence modern behavior in India?
You see, one has to be very clear about what one does and what one must not do. So an economist prescribes policy. A political activist is actually involved in the process of change. An economist is advocating policy change. A historian is not in the business of giving advice on how to live a better life or how to shape a better society. A prescription and prediction should be beyond the scope of a historian. They use the past to illuminate the present and leave it to the individual reader to judge what they can take out of the work, both to understand the past and to reshape the present if they so want. So I'm not guiding people on uh, what to on reading my books with a view to understanding how the legacy of Gandhi or Ambedkar or indeed Shankar Guhan Yogi can help them in building a better India, better world. That's so an economist sees himself as a policy wonk, as prescriptive. Sometimes, if you're advising governments, at the other times advising opposition leaders, and so on, because you feel that when they come to power, they'll be in a position to enact these policies. But that's not what historians do. So and that's not what newspaper columnists should do either. So I think one of the great advantages of being the kind of uh, you know whatever newspaper columnist. I have problems with the term public intellectual, but whatever. A writer for the public on political matters, which is what I do, is one of the advantages is living in Bangalore because you're far away from Delhi. You have a distance from the centers of power. And I think that gives you a certain clarity about what you can say and what you can't say. So, as I said, every individual, if you a writer must always uh, remember that the reader comes with a fresh and independent mind. They may like something you write, they may not like something you write. They may agree, they may disagree. You may think a particular column of yours was brilliant and no one responds to it. You may think another column of yours was like casual and superficial and written in a hurry, and you find everyone is discussing it. So you can't anticipate this, and it does not even try and mold the reader in a particular direction. That's at least my view.
Do you sometimes feels like crystal ball grazing because of kind of?
No. So a historian is not in the business of prescribing or predicting. Not at all. Not at all. So,
Sir,
once or twice I made the mistake of prescribing, of advising. But I have completely stopped. Once or twice in the column I have said, such and such party should do this. They should choose, I think they should choose X as their next leader and not as Y, But now I think I realized that was kind of an arrogance of an intellectual, that he thinks he can reshape society. But I can still say, judging between politician X and Y, these are the strengths and the weaknesses of politician X. These are strengths and weaknesses of politician Y. And you make up your mind which you prefer.
Sir, from one of your comments, that is it important for a public intellectual to keep a distance from politics?
No, it's not politics, but from political parties and individual politicians.
Okay.
So a writer has views. A writer is a conservative, a socialist, a liberal. So their broad philosophies a writer prescribes to. Even specific policies. One sort of writer may want a strong center. Another way wants a strong states. A third may say it's not the center and the states, it's the panchayats and the municipalities that have to be strengthened. So a writer has views on economic policy, agriculture versus industry, on environmental sustainability. But in my view, and of course, all of us are citizens. So when an election comes, we vote, in the confines of the ballot box. But you should certainly be willing to meet politicians. Don't teach them as untouchable. Talk to them, discuss with them, listen to them, but on your terms. So again, one of the things I do is I live in Bangalore. And over I've now over the last 20 odd years, ever since I've been writing more for the press, and especially after the publication of India After Gandhi, which is almost 20 years ago, occasionally politicians reach out to me saying, we'd like to chat with you. And I say, of course, and let's meet. But let's meet at a cafe, not in your house or in mine. Because the signal it sends.
Right.
If I was to go to a politician's house, the signal is I am a supplicant.
Mm-hmm.
If the politician was to come to my house, the signal would be I am identifying with that politician and his party, so I'm welcoming him into my house. So in a neutral place. In Bangalore, my favorite place is a lovely cafe called Koshi's,
I
which is
heard
sort of similar to the old Calcutta Coffee House. It's a place where people have addas, intellectuals, and lawyers. So I said, let's meet there. Sometimes, and I have met people there from the Congress, from the CPM, and from the RSS in that place, and even from the socialist tradition. Sometimes a politician is more doesn't want to be so visible. So I said, okay, we'll meet in a hotel where you can meet in a quiet, corner. But so that's very important for writers to zealously safeguard their independence.
Understood.
My views are not shared by everyone, and I understand why people have different views, because it's not that a politician, it's not that a writer who's advising a politician or political party wants to curry favor. No, they want to shape politics. They want to change society. They believe it's not enough just to write books and articles.
Mm.
So I respect that view, but that is not mine. So you know, uh, so that is, as I said, that's why I will meet anyone of any ideological stripe, but in a cafe,
Understand, sir.
not in their home or mine.
Right, sir. So, though you say that you do not write on certain aspects, but you have traversed a wide range of areas, right? You have talked about history, you have
Yeah.
talked about environment, you have talked about cricket. So, is in this interdisciplinary, increasingly the world is becoming interdisciplinary. And my question is that given the fact that you know the IIM system, how can we become more interdisciplinary in our work, in our attitude, and our research?
So that's interesting. I'm not associated with any institution, but there are two institutions in Bangalore. The National Law School
Right, sir.
is a professional school that teaches law.
Right,
They are now starting a regular BA program. Okay, the IIM in Bangalore, I think, wants to start an undergraduate program.
right. They have
So,
started.
as they've started, I don't know how interesting. I hope it is not a BBA. I hope it's a BA, maybe
No,
with majoring in finance, or I don't know what it is, but they
it will.
must have history, they must have sociology, they must have philosophy, they must have literature, and also some technology. I think also having some understanding of science. That's why I feel deficient in the modern world, because I don't have an understanding of technology, and that reshapes our life. So people in the social sciences need to understand the sciences. People in the sciences need to understand the social sciences. So yes, of course, I did economics and then sociology and then moved into history. And the three of the things I work on. I work on the environment, I work on sport, I work on kind of democracy, and I write biographies, and of course most seriously about Gandhi. But I think I'm happy. It's fine for a scholar to just specialize, and that's also fine. I mean, a scholar I greatly admire, Professor Andre Bete, who in some ways is actually the Indian intellectual I admire most of all. And particularly his integrity, his rectitude, his moral, independence. He has spent most of his life working on power and inequality. Now, you could argue that is the real most important issue for a sociologist. How is power distributed? How do you move? How do you juxtapose equality, inequality, and the functioning of institutions? So some people, there is this uh, famous essay by Isaiah Berlin on the hedgehog and the fox, which draws on a line of Tolstoy. The fox knows one really, the hedgehog knows one really big important thing. The fox knows many less important things.
Right.
So I'm more a fox than a hedgehog. And Professor Bete is a fox. I'm a hedgehog, you could say. So it is different intellectual styles.
But if we need to encourage people to become more interdisciplinary, how should we? How should, as especially our students?
As I said, Partho, I don't prescribe.
Okay.
I think it's for professors of the IIM to see how the world is changing, interact with different people, and then reshape the curriculum. I mean, I left IIM 40 years ago. So that's a very long time. So I can't, but yeah, absolutely. So I think moving towards a more interdisciplinary model, while retaining some element of specialization. I think that's something I think that would, I think the IIM has done more to, at least as I remember it, as 40 years out of date. But every IIM has economics.
Right.
But I don't know whether your PGP program still contains it.
Yeah,
But when I was there,
it has.
the IIM Calcutta was the only IIM that had sociology, geography, and history as mandatory subjects. They had different names. One
Mm.
was called, history was called, I think, social and political environment or something like that it was called. And but at least there in the IIM in Calcutta, at least recognized that the soft, what people think of as the softer social sciences,
Right.
but actually which give you a deeper understanding of the society and culture in which you function as managers is important.
Absolutely.
So
And we
I
are
think,
realizing it more and more these days.
yeah. So for example, IIM Ahmedabad had a wonderful course. Uh, I forget what it was called. I think it's called ISP, Indian Social, oh, so Indian Social and something Environment. It was run by a remarkable professor called Anil Gupta,
Right.
who did amazing field work on particularly on indigenous technologies, innovations by farmers. Amazing man. But that course was optional, not compulsory.
Mm.
So hardly anyone took it. Right. Even though it was maybe the most interesting course on campus, taught by one of the most charismatic professors, So because we can't get us a job, we cannot get us a job. So we have to do finance and marketing and operations research and computer science. How will this get us a job? So I think that is something where I think one has to move. Now, I think people are slowly moving in that direction.
I think so. Yeah. So we may reach out to you to get your
Right.
more
Sure.
constructive views
Sure.
sometimes, sir. Sir, as you have kind of interacted both nationally and internationally, in the recent year, do you see India is changing its position in the global economy in terms, not only in terms of the size of the economy, but in terms of cultural impact, the emergence of India as
So
a
I won't talk. I won't talk about. I won't talk about economics and protectionism versus globalization. But every country is becoming more insular, more inward. Insular and inward are neutral words. They're descriptive words.
Mhm.
But I would rather use value-laden words. Every country is becoming insular and inward, which is also xenophobic and narrow-minded. And India is no exception. It's true of America, it's true of it's true of England, it's true of Hungary, it's true of Turkey, it's true of China. I think this is a huge mistake. You know, there's a wonderful line of Tagore. I mean, the people who inspired me are not just Gandhi and Ambedkar, but also Nehru and Tagore and many, many others. And there's a wonderful line of Tagore where he says, it's from a essay written, uh, more than 100 years ago. He says, we must glory in the illumination of a lamp lit anywhere in the world because it's part of the common heritage of humankind,
Mm.
which means the Americans, the Chinese can learn from us, we can learn from the Chinese. Different kinds of things, right? So I think, but of course, there was also this debate between Gandhi and Tagore on this, in which Gandhi actually started as a xenophobe, and Tagore was able to shake him out of it. So at the end of that debate, Gandhi said, "I, my windows are open and all the winds will blow freely, but I will not be blown off by any. But I will learn from them. I will listen. I will engage." And I have never felt the desire to leave my country. I've had chances to get jobs overseas. I have just not even considered them, for a minute when these offers came. But every travel of mine has enriched my understanding. And when I say travel, it is not just to the West, it is also to our neighboring countries. So one of my ambitions was to visit every country that borders India. Now, you will know, Parfo, that as an Indian intellectual of a certain standing, it is very easy to get invitations to conferences or to give talks in Europe, America, Scandinavia, even Japan. And I've been to all these places. But you can't go to China because of the barrier, Pakistan. But I've been to China and Pakistan for meetings. But I have been to Nepal, Myanmar, Bhutan. and Bangladesh on my own expense. Because
Okay.
these are equally, to understand my country, I need to know my neighborhood. Also, to understand my country, I have to visit every part of India. So I was fortunate, as you said in your introductory remarks, to have lived in different parts of India. But I've been to other parts. So I have been to every state except Nagaland.
Radio, I saw it in one of your interviews that you said that. Are you
And I
planning
want to go to Nagaland,
to
but the pandemic happened. My
COVID?
ticket was
Yeah.
booked, and I still hope to go. Now I have some medical issue. Once it's resolved, so I think knowing different parts of the country, not being mired only in your linguistic zone or your province, and opening out. And I think these are all, I think this is what Gandhi and Tagore taught us, that you can have overlapping identities. To engage with the world does not make you less of an Indian. To be a Bengali traveling in different parts of South India does not make you less of a Bengali. So I think that is where I think this open-mindedness. I mean, regardless of economic policy, I don't comment on economic policy. Are tariffs good, or is should you have import substitution economics, or you should just follow the Ricardian model and comparative advantage? That I leave to the economists. But in terms of your mind, your attitude, your worldview, be open.
Do you see a change in India's position in the world, that people are looking India differently, or is
I
it?
can't. I'm not. I can't answer that because for the last 8 or 9 years, I've hardly traveled overseas. I mean, first the pandemic came,
Okay.
then I had some health issues. Now I'm not young. I'm in my late 60s, so I've kind of lost touch with. I mean, I still read about other countries. I read writers from other countries. I learn from them, but I can't. I don't travel enough outside to say. But one thing I'd say certainly, tourism, foreign tourism to India has certainly declined quite dramatically. I mean, I was just talking about Koshi's. In Koshi's cafe, you would always see non-Indians. Now, whether this is to do with the pandemic or the attractiveness of other places like Thailand and Dubai, and also I can't say. But I think certainly there were many more people, not just wealthy people coming to do business, but also young people coming to hitchhike and see different parts of India. That seems to have declined.
Okay. So
But
that's,
this is an impressionistic remark.
I
Someone
understand.
should study this in a scholarly.
I understand. So more anecdotal from
Yeah.
your personal experience. So now you're the next going to your other academic pursuit, that's environmental history. So how do you think the India's environmental history is kind of dictating our climate policies, the climate issue?
So, I must say, this was talking about interdisciplinary work. I have to tell you how I became a scholar of the environment. I was doing a PhD in sociology. We have time? We can continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I was doing a PhD in sociology at IIM, and I was looking for a classical
Who was your supervisor, sir?
Professor Kamini Adhikari.
Okay.
So, she was my main supervisor, but there was a brilliant young faculty member who was really my guide and you could say my mentor, someone called Anjan Ghosh, who died young of cancer.
Okay.
He then joined the Calcutta Center. So these two, Kamini and Anjan, Professor Kamini Adhikari and Anjan Ghosh, were my main supervisors. So sociologists normally do field work. So I was thinking of going to maybe uh, Anjan Ghosh had done field work among mine workers in Dhanbad. So I was thinking of the steel plant in Jamshedpur and looking at worker management relations, or going to Bihar and looking at the sort of caste issues in Bihar. And there was a visiting professor who came to IIM, Jayanto Bandyopadhyay from IIM Bangalore, and who
Ah,
later taught at IIM Calcutta. He was then at IIM Bangalore. And Professor Bandyopadhyay gave a talk, and after that we were chatting in the cafe after talk, and he asked me, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Dehradun." He said, "Work on the Chipko movement that happened very close to Dehradun, and no one has done a sociological study on it. Journalists have written about it." So I took his idea, did some field work in Garhwal, met the leaders, and decided to do my thesis on peasant forest grassroots activism. Then I got interested in history. So then my dissertation started in the 19th century. TIPCO is actually a phenomenon of the 1970s. My dissertation started in the 1860s with the formation of the colonial forest department and the takeover of the forests of the peasants by the colonial state, and what kind of friction and dislocation and resistance it caused. So then I got interested in this whole nexus between forests and people. Meanwhile, there was a vigorous debate on how Indian forest policy had become excessively commercialized, Apart from Chipko, there were movement of the Narmada movement. And then I really became a student of the history and sociology of environmentalism, the global environmental debate long before climate change. You will recall there was a debate sparked by the Limits to Growth report, and so on. And now, of course, there's this whole climate change issue. And my take on this, and I'll be absolutely blunt, I've said this in lectures. I've said, even if climate change did not exist, India would be an environmental disaster zone. We have the highest rates of air pollution in the world in our cities of northern Western India. Our rivers are biologically dead, ruined by disposal of toxic and household waste. Groundwater aquifers are depleting everywhere. Our soil is degraded. And all this is independent of climate change. Our forests are being destroyed. Climate change makes it worse. That if there's haphazard road construction in the Himalaya, the Western Ghats, leading to landslides, and there is an unprecedented cloudburst, people die and homes are swept away and so on. Right? Climate change is an add-on, deadly add-on to a major problem that already exists. Right? Now, so that's really the burden of my recent columns on this subject, and some of my scholarly talks too. And this issue, deflecting into climate change, lets Indian policymakers off the hook, because they say it's all the problem of the West. They caused it. They have to clean up. They have to give us free time. But no, air pollution is a domestic problem caused by faulty politics. Air pollution, water pollution, groundwater depletion, soil toxicity of the soil, deforestation, landslides are all caused by faulty policies promoted by incompetent or corrupt politicians of all parties.
Absolutely.
So that is too much of a focus on climate change distracts attention from what is the real environmental challenges we face, and the burden of all of this, Partho, the burden of air pollution, of water pollution, of groundwater depletion, of deforestation, of soil erosion, all this falls disproportionately on the working poor. You and me are insulated in our air-conditioned offices, in drinking bottled water. We are insulated, right? Driving cars. So it's got a serious equity issue also, environmental integrity. So that is really how I see it, which is why, though climate change is a real issue, at least in India, it's a secondary issue. It's not the main issue.
Sir, it was very interesting with your point. I mean, I just want to add one point that my friends who are in technology says that technological solution exists to correct some of these problems, but the political will might be the problem.
Not just technological. Technological, put it narrowly. We have the scientific and technological expertise. Yeah. So it's not one technology. It's not merely nuclear fusion or solar energy. So it is, we have the experts who will tell us how to manage our water wisely. We have economists who will show us what kind of subsidies to give farmers so that they don't burn stubble. We have town planning experts who will tell us what transport and housing policies we can follow to minimize the footprint of cities. All this is there. How to move parts of India towards a more ecologically sustainable agriculture. What kind of crops to go that are not water guzzling, that conserve the soil and yet generate income. So not only technical or technological solutions, but broader scientific and social scientific expertise exists, but the governments don't consult. And again, this environmental illiteracy, Partho, runs across parties. I'll give you one last example. Professor Madhav Gadgil died last month. He was India's greatest ecologist. I had the enormous privilege of working with him and writing 2 books with him. His last major intellectual contribution was a report on the Western Ghats, which was actually not anti-development at all. It just was prescribing what kinds of policies were needed to practice what we call sustainable development, to generate employment, incomes, etc., without imperiling the prospects of the environment or the soil, the water, the forest on which our future generations depend. His report was dismissed by every state government, by the communists in Kerala, by the Congress in my state Karnataka, by the DMK in Tamil Nadu, by the BJP in Goa, Maharashtra and Gujarat. Every government dismissed it. because it interfered with their, ability to actually make money on contracts. I'll be blunt. So it is not, you cannot blame one particular party for this. You can blame the Congress for dynastic politics. You can blame the BJP for majoritarian politics. You can blame the DMK and the TMC for narrow-minded regional politics that is not in the national interest. But when it comes to the environmental crisis and the refusal to not just face it, even acknowledge it, every political party is culpable. That is our tragedy.
Is it lack of understanding about how
No.
serious?
It is partly lack of understanding. It is partly, there's that famous remark of Keynes. I'm paraphrasing.
In the long run.
Every politician is hostage to the ideas of a long defunct economist or something. The remark. I'm paraphrasing. That's part of it. That the economists who advise them think this is just some rich man's problem. It is only about beautiful trees and protecting tigers, whereas it's a livelihood problem. So partly it's bad advice, mostly from economists who don't take this problem seriously, but partly it is sheer malevolence. So it's ignorance plus malevolence.
Is it because the horizon of the politicians is
That
short?
also, you're right. 5 years. 5 years.
Yeah.
What do I do to win a re-election quickly? Promise a spectacular road. Say I'm going to build this that is going to generate 10,000 jobs. And after 5 years,
I'll see another
300 jobs may have come instead of 10,000, but who is there to judge you? But the forest has been destroyed, the water has been polluted, the soil has gone, and you are pushed off.
So the system is basically rigged against long-term issues, right?
No, but if you have decentralized, this is Manav Gadgil's great insights. If you have decentralized management, if you say, and you didn't, of course, if you have centralized, you also need money to fight it. I'll give you an example. Let's say in the village that is no longer now swallowed up by Kolkata, beyond Joka, Pailan.
Pailan, yeah.
In Pailan, say, near it is run by the village panchayat. Let's say, near Pailan, gold is found. Okay, gold is found. Now, under the law, the state government says this gold belongs to us. The central government can say, no, gold is actually belongs to us. We will give it to our mining company. And either Writers Building will decide or North Block in Delhi will decide. So Panchayat has no say. The central politicians or state level politicians take it over, hand it over. They get nothing out of it. They get no employment. The local villagers get no employment, no money, no decision-making say. All they have to bear is the negative externalities of mining, which is air and water pollution, and depletion of their water, of their everything, But if you're the local panchayat, okay, the mining company has to negotiate with them. So the panchayat says, you have to give us, every family gets one job, and we have a 25% stake in the company so that we will share in the profits. Now, this will ensure two things. One, it will ensure more sustainable mining practices because you're looking at law, and also it will be more equitable. So decentralization, empowering panchayats is a way in which you can actually manage the environment much better. In Karnataka, between 1991 and 1996, there was genuine decentralization. And at that stage, Professor Gadgil found that water, forest, pasture were much better managed. Both more environmentally sustainable management, but also more socially equitable management. So we are now seeing a situation where not only is power being taken away from the panchayats and the municipalities, power is being taken away from state capitals and going to the center. So we are actually going in the wrong direction. I mean, federalism, decentralization is good for many reasons. But environmental wisdom, wise environmental policies is one of the underappreciated benefits of political decentralization.
Local stakeholders' involvement becomes...
Exactly. Absolute.
And
so Professor Gadgil always advocated that, yeah.
Kind of going back to Gandhi in that way, right?
Yes, certainly. Certainly going back to Gandhi, no doubt. Yeah. More than Gandhi, Jayaprakash Narayan, who after Gandhi already raised this issue of Panchayati Raj and what he called the reconstruction of the Indian polity.
Sir, now coming back closer home, just wanted to ask you that how your stint in IIM has kind of influenced your writing, research, and your your public
I'll tell
discourse.
you. I'll tell you. Have to give you a slightly long answer.
Sure, sure.
And
Absolutely.
some of it may not be, most of it will be pleasing to the IIM, or some of it will not be pleasing to the IIM, but that's okay. First of all, I'm deeply grateful to the IIM for giving me a second chance in life. So I did a BA and MA in economics. As I told you, I was a bad student. In after my MA previous, the Delhi School had instituted a research fellowship for a summer fellowship. My uncle was involved in Hindustan Aircraft, and he told me about a factory in Koraput in the Adivasi area. So I got a fellowship from the Delhi School to study the productivity of tribal workers in Koraput. So I was, collecting productivity data, running a regression, and so on. And there, a local anthropologist told me about the work of Verrier Elvin, who was a British anthropologist who had worked in Ashok, in Orissa, and in Chhattisgarh, and so on. And then I went back to university, took out Elvin's book, and decided sociology and anthropology is for me. I mean, I'm not suited to him. I'm a poor student. I'm not so good at maths. I don't have an analytical mind. I have more empirical mind. I want to deal with real human beings, not with numbers and statistics and graphs and equations. But because I had an ordinary second class record in my BA and my MA, the top departments of sociology, which were Delhi University, JNU, Pune, would not give me admission. Luckily, I had just started a PhD program and I was the first student.
Oh,
Complete stroke of luck. And there I found Anjan Ghosh and Kamini Adhikari, who mentored me, and I found this great library. So I entered IIM, and I could really understand what the management students were doing, or what the aims in life were, because I did not want to join McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Citibank. And they could not understand what the hell I was doing. Because I had come from St. Stephen's, I was a polished guy, I was well known even then for winning quizzes all over India. On that basis, I could have got that same job in McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, because that was the anglicized work, upper class English speaking boy from St. Stephen's could walk in without a MBA. So they could understand what I was doing. I could understand what they were doing. We was friendly, and we had a nice bridge circle at night, and we used to play and all that. But there was this great library, because when IIM was started in the 60s,
right.
it had, the historians were Sabyasachi Bhattacharya and Barunde. The economists included Ashok Mitra and
Right.
Paresh Chattopadhyay. The sociologists were Kamini Adhikari, and also Gaurango, Chattopadhyay, whose PhD is in anthropology. So they had a large budget from, I think, Ford Foundation or somewhere.
Was
So
it in Baranagar then?
no, it had come to Joka. It had come to Joka. So they built this great library in sociology, history, and anthropology. I think in those days, back in the 60s, College Street had these great bookshops. You could buy all the old books.
Yeah.
They had a budget to order the entire back runs from 1880 of American Anthropologist, American Historical Review, Past and Present, Comparative Studies in Society and History, all the top journals, apart from EPW and so on. And here I was, the only reader of all of this. If I had done a PhD in JNU or Delhi, I'd had 300 people competing with me for that book, for that journal article. They had the run of the whole library. And the librarians were thrilled. There were some two very sweet librarians. They were thrilled that this boy is here till 10 o'clock at night, and he's asking us for more books. He's taking 4 books, returning them in 3 days. And we see he's the first person who's taken this book out. They were so happy. So what I learned, this is an important lesson for young writers and scholars. What I learned at the IIM was the value of solitude. When I was in St. Stephen's, I was a cricket player, I was a bridge player, I was a quizzer. I was always hanging around with other people. I was never by myself. But if you want to become any kind of scholar or creative person, you have to spend time with yourself, your ideas. And at the IIM, I learned that by accident, because no one else shared my interests. So I learned that. But Anjan Ghosh in particular taught me many things. I mean, he was a wonderful teacher, and he gave me, apart from introducing me to the finest works of sociological scholarship, he also gave me some intellectual lessons that have stood me to this day, and which I find very valuable. I'll just share one, if I may, because this may be relevant at least to young scholars who might. He said, always distinguish between the scholar and the scholar's writings. There may be a certain scholar who's a very saintly, kind human being, very approachable, very human, very generous, but their scholarship may be quite mediocre. On the other hand, there may be a scholar who's an arrogant asshole, who's rude, offensive, but their scholarship may be very good. So don't judge the scholar by their personality. You can judge your friends by their personality, but not a scholar. Judge a scholar, because sometimes what happens is, it happens to young people. It happened to me also. I really admire a scholar, greatly. And then I write him a fan letter, no reply. I write a second and a third. And then he sent me a one-line letter saying, why are you troubling me, you bloody idiot, you young man? And then you say, then you never read that scholar again, because you think your ego is wounded. So
All of us face that, sir.
yeah. But this lesson Anjan taught me, till today, it has helped me, and I tell other people too. Of course, it's wonderful if a fine scholar is also a fine human being. That's wonderful. But that could be the exception rather than the rule. Remember that.
Right. So, any other lasting influence of IIM on your outlook?
I think more Kolkata.
Okay.
More Kolkata. Because again, I think Kolkata, I don't know what it's like now. Because Anjan also introduced me to the city. So he made me join a film club. Through him, I got to know the National Library. I would go for seminars in the Calcutta Center. Kolkata, had that kind of, at least back then, talking about interdisciplinary approach, broadening your mind. If you go to a film club in Delhi, they'll all be middle class people. They'll all be professionals. In Kolkata, there's a tram driver who's part of the film club. There's a clerk, at least back then. Right? So that is a broader interest in intellectual life beyond my books and my research, and a deeper appreciation of culture, I think, came from Kolkata, which I'm grateful to. More than I am also, but more Kolkata per se. Now I don't know the metro comes there, but even that day we went to Thakurpukur and you took a bus. And when you were young, S8 and S16 they were called. You didn't mind, Now at my age, I would say, sitting in a bus, Kolkata is so humid, it's so sticky, and what the hell. But those days I didn't mind. So 2 days a week I would go to the city.
Okay, great to know that, sir, that you liked Kolkata so much during your PhD period. Now, one kind of tricky question here, that given that we are in a very kind of polarized, difficult kind of a world, how should intellectual academicians, professionals behave beyond their call of duty? Do they have some response?
It's up to the individual. It's entirely up to the individual. That's why I don't like the term public intellectual. I do engage with the public much more than most intellectuals. I write a fortnightly column. Occasionally, I sign a petition. But it's up to Andre Bete was never signing petitions. He was never in a dharna. He would write for the press. But he didn't like the term public intellectual. So it's up to the individual, their particular personality, their choices, their character. It's up to them. No one should be judged either because they engage too much with the non-academic world or they engage too little. No. Certainly, if an intellectual becomes too close to a ruling party politician, you judge. That's bad. Doesn't matter which party. Then you lose credibility. If you hang out with a minister or prime minister too much, or even a chief minister too much, you have lost your credibility. That yes. But how much you want to engage in public activity is left to the individual scholar and their choices and their temperament.
So now coming to your other area of interest, cricket. I think that you like Test cricket more. Interestingly, Test cricket is becoming more interesting, right? All the matches are having results. It is shortened. T20 cricket has taken off, but is that killing the in-between format that is the 50?
It may or may not. Actually, I don't watch T20 at all. I find it nonsensical. No interest from a aesthetic or sporting point of view. It's just a I mean, I wrote an article when IPL was started saying that, I don't know whether you saw this in the Telegraph, 2008. I wrote an article saying, uh, Test cricket is like single malt whiskey. You savor every sip. I 50-50 is like Indian made foreign liquor. You still don't mind it. T20 is like the local who's like Bangla. Okay. All you remember is I got smashed. You watch a test match, you remember, Gavaskar batted for 4 hours and we had a draw. Remember, the wicket started taking turn on the fourth day and Chandrasekhar ran. We never expected to win the match. You remember all of that, every wicket. I mean, I can remember every wicket that Chandrasekhar took in 1971 in the Oval Test, which is 55 years ago. T20, 50 over also you remember some particular moments. The catch that Kapil Dev took to get Viv Richards out in the 83 World Cup. T20, all you remember is I got smashed. I'm an addict. I need my alcohol. I can't get single malt. I can't even get old monk. Go buy some Bangla and get smashed. So that's what it is. That was the analogy I used, and I stick to that. So, but I find that maybe 50 over bats are coming back. I mean, if you look at even this recent series against New Zealand, that last match in Indore, where it was Kohli against New Zealand.
Right.
It had epic quality to it.
Absolutely.
And India lost, but that didn't matter, so I think because in T20, firstly, 10 overs, the bowler has more chances. Over 50 overs, a batsman can structure an innings, not going bang, 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 but pace the innings and depending on who's got out, who the partner is. And it has much more subtlety. So I don't think 50 overs will die so easily. But yes, this franchise cricket is problematic. And if India loses too much in Test cricket, as it might do, started doing, then the Indian fans will turn away from it, which will be a pity.
So given that you are a off spinner during your heydays, so may I ask you who are your top 5 bowlers and top 5 batsmen?
No, Prasanna. For me, as an off spinner, Prasanna was gold standard.
He was from Karnataka, right?
He was also from Karnataka, so I watched him when I was young. Prasanna, absolutely. I did Bishan Bedi and Chandrasekhar, certainly. So I grew up with that generation. You see, the English cricket writer Ian Peebles, Scottish cricket writer actually, British Ian Peebles, who also played Test cricket, said once, there are no cricketers like those seen through 12-year-old eyes. So your heroes are always those of your school days, and that'll be true for you too. So for me, it would mean among Indian cricketers, Bedi, Chandra, Prasanna, Vishwanath, Gavaskar. Among foreign cricketers, the West Indians, so Clive Lloyd, Viv Richards, Andy Roberts. Among the Pakistanis, it would be Javed Miandad, Zahir Abbas, of course, Imran Khan. So among the Sri Lankans, it would probably be, the Sri Lankans came too late, but I was quite old. But among English, it would be, Jeffrey Boycott, for sure. So I think those, obviously I admire all the later cricketers too. I mean, I think, whatever but I am a partisan of Test cricket and of bowling. I prefer bowlers to batsmen because batsmen get too much patta. They win all the awards, they get all the endorsements. So for me, Wasim Akram, Shane Warne.
I was about to ask you about Shane Warne.
Wasim Akram, Shane Warne, Jimmy Anderson, the subtlety of the movement, not blind pace, but subtlety. Yeah, I loved watching them. I would watch Jimmy Anderson and Wasim Akram and Shane Warne forever.
Absolutely.
So I'm really a bowlers is what I like. I love Bumrah, today Bumrah, because he's a fast bowler with so much subtlety and variation, right? So I'm a partisan of bowlers. If you ask me, that's why whenever I choose an all-time India 11, Kumble is always captain, not Gavaskar, not Kohli, always Kumble. So I'm a partisan of bowlers. As a bowler myself, I believe bowlers have been unfairly treated.
Absolutely. So it was a fascinating discussion, sir. One day we'll talk about cricket and its influence on contemporary India.
Sure. Great. Thank you.